to divergent interests across the players in higher education, posing policy challenges for the HECC. So, and not a surprise to you all, but some of what we see here. So we had a couple of questions on the survey where we created a continuum, and we asked folks to place themselves on this continuum of two different ideas. And so when we asked, does the HECC have no role to play in terms of minimizing competition, or should the HECC take steps to ensure that all post-secondary education and training providers thrive, even if it means that you're going to have to impose some limits? And so you do see a higher percentage of respondents on that end of wanting the HECC to take a more directive, play a more directive role here and impose some of those constraints to reduce competition among institutions. So when we think about, again, how to respond here, there's some tension. So in terms of solutions, so some folks really emphasize the importance of supporting transferability between community colleges and universities. However, that can be seen as impacting competition for universities if you have more students engaging in community colleges in those early years. Another place where there's some decision points are related to, is it better to have more degree programs at individual universities and colleges and across the system to improve access for students where they're at? Or this idea of centers of excellence, where you're really concentrating certain degree programs and potentially reducing the collective costs, across the system by focusing them. So naming those, those tensions there. And then thinking about how, in this case, your role to play over the system, because if there's more local control in these kinds of decisions, you are more likely to have duplication and redundancy. Makes sense, because colleges want to provide those opportunities for their community. So this could be a place where folks were saying the HECC could play a directive role, again, to reduce competition across the system. Theme 5, so there's a desire to balance a focus on uplifting Oregon's most vulnerable, marginalized students with the broader goals such as the 40-40-20. So many stakeholders pointed to the fact that the HECC's role to serve marginalized and historically underrepresented and underserved students is the primary function of the HECC. It should be a primary focus. Some stakeholders would really like to see the HECC play a stronger and more directive role in how institutions also promote and increase equity in their student populations and in their communities. You can see equity loud and clear was the most prevalent word that folks suggested for future values for the organization. Stakeholders would like to see the HECC take actions to provide more targeted support and services to Oregon's most marginalized students. For some, this included directing more funding and resources to rural community colleges and students. Something else that came up related in this area was really wanting to take a closer look at the HECC's KPMs and to really explore, and Richard, this may have been part of what you were getting at, understanding, better communicating the why behind those metrics and what you're measuring. So if you're looking at the measures as indicators, what are the indicators of? Those, not seeing those as the goals in and of themselves, but what are the broader goals that these are really aligned under, doing a better job of communicating that connection. Theme 6, in supporting learner pathways, it is critical to understand and address points where students leave the educational system. So stakeholders pointed to the fact that they believe Oregon is really falling short in that connection from K-12 into post-secondary education, and that there's lots of opportunity for improving the quality of advising and college readiness that's happening at the high school level, but then also, providing quality coaching and support and advising, really stretching from even middle school years through that college experience. So the ease of transferability between community colleges and universities is, again, came up here as a place where you lose students. That's an important place to make improvements in those transition points. Again, acknowledgement of the potential impacts on competition. Also just naming that this is a very tedious process. And so a bit of resistance in that regard. Learners' mental health and well-being also came up in this area as, again, a point or a reason at which students leave the educational system that may need more attention and focus. Page 7. Ensuring a strong Oregon economy in the future through robust workforce linkages should be re-emphasized as a key goal for the HECC and its work. So here you see again one of those kind of continuum questions from the survey where we asked, should the HECC support all post-secondary credentials equally, or should the HECC prioritize funding and strategies to promote those high demand, high value post-secondary credentials? And here you see stakeholders leaning towards that, prioritizing those high demand, high value post-secondary credentials. So survey respondents saw the lack of alignment between workforce development, funding and initiatives, and higher education as a top challenge within the state. When we asked about policy and advocacy priorities for the HECC, their third highest priority was strengthening workforce linkages. Stakeholders spoke to the importance of connecting with employers to really understand their talent needs and felt like there was some opportunity for the HECC to do that better. As well as both HECC and higher education institutions really preparing for both future workforce needs and changes in the landscape. Let's see. So here again, we'll just kind of name that stakeholders spoke to the importance of having access in their communities to those high demand, high value training, opportunities connected to those high demand, high value career areas, with the idea that if we're able to train people in these areas, we may be more likely to keep students in our communities and fill those workforce shortages. Theme 8. There is opportunity to better define the coordinating role of the HECC in relation to institutions and the overall higher education landscape. So Thoreau, I believe you also spoke to this as an important focus for this strategic plan, really defining the role that the HECC plays. So we did hear from stakeholders that they see the HECC as a convener, as a strategic director, as an amplifier of best practices who does hold institutions accountable. There are some places where they want kind of more of that role from the HECC. So in convening and really bringing together leaders from community colleges and universities to identify shared vision, shared goals. There are some stakeholders who would really like to see the HECC holding institutions more accountable to the operational initiatives they've committed to, such as the Common Course numbering. Also seeing the HECC play a more active role in both championing the value of diversity and really setting the standard around DEI and what's expected, as opposed to letting institutions take their own approaches. Another thing here is kind of a coordinating role that folks would like to see the commission playing, kind of having a stronger presence on, is that messaging around both the value of education, but also how to access higher education and training, that then the institutions can then distribute that messaging to students and their families and communities, but getting that consistent messaging from the HECC. And then this is our last theme, so thanks for your patience as we walked through these and again brought them into the room. Theme 9, there's a desire to define and strengthen the commission's role in advocacy and ultimately secure more funding for higher education. So stakeholders really spoke to the fact that higher education has not been seen as a priority in Oregon for quite some time. Many would like to see the HECC play a stronger advocacy role with the legislature to be bolder in advocating for what's needed to keep up with rising costs. Others, just noted that there are some constraints here, and certainly for staff and what they're able to do in this regard, and then also just constraints related to statute and what funding is provided from the legislature. So people really want to emphasize this, the expertise and skills that the HECC staff bring. And so then spoke to what role, what strategic role could commission members play in this regard? And are there ways to really, as you said, Chair Rowe, kind of look at what other states have done and how they've been able to have impacts and share those best practices. So that is the run through of all of our themes. And then we want to create some space for discussion. So we're actually going to invite you to kind of cluster up in some small groups with maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people that you're seated nearby, and have a brief small group discussion, and then we'll share out the large group. We'll invite the folks who are virtual. Colleen, we may need to mute in the room. We'll figure it out for you all to have a conversation as well. So here are the 3 questions. First, again, bringing these stakeholder perspectives into the room, what resonates for you? What reaffirms your thinking or your experience? What surprises you, if anything? And then starting to kind of make that transition into this work of developing the strategic plan. What are the key questions or considerations related to the strategic plan that for you arise out of these insights? If you all wouldn't mind just maybe noting these questions down. For anyone that doesn't have the situation assessment in front of them, I'm going to go back and pull up that list of themes. So what resonates, what surprised you, and then essentially what are the implications for the strategic plan? And again, we'll probably take 10 minutes to have some small group conversations, and then we can share out with a larger group. Okay, turn around. I'm going to go back. Any questions on what I'm asking folks to do right now? You? You know what?
Colleen, in the breakout.
I'm good.
All right, so what do you
Good.
These are the questions I always ask my students when I teach at the end. These are hard. I would say like it's just like, you know, so I guess it goes. Like, you know, I think it's should be thankful to at least. And then, I mean, hopefully that's nice. Anyway, what resonated with me was just like the naughtiness. I would attention.
But I think what really resonates for teachers. It's not just here, but anytime I think about our state certifications everywhere. Is that there is a 16 case studies in that relevancy issue. Getting to that wrapping this interesting value. And then, I mean, and I think that really is. I feel like that's the that I hear kind of big things. But like people like what is that word? It's the ROI it's like specific skill like a commodity. And then, I feel like that is like related to that responsibility. Because I feel like students don't possible students they're thinking about demands that a sense of contribute to this. In the sense that we need money, not and saying give us more money. There's not this but not lines. And so it sounds like how capacity that allows me to have an off-ramp, but then it all grants. I decide that I want to come back. This business responsibility, ability within the system, which is really responsible growth. Who shared this?
That is some answer is productive.
I know, why don't we have it? Hey, why don't we do, well, it's, yeah, and down. How does that work? You know, I don't know. That whole
That is something that in my those big which includes like visual skills and
Which is when I was at number 8, I think about like design the field, oh, that. But it's like there's all of these different pathways in there, and they go at different issues. It's really to all the gap, we think that's how that's what we're already doing, so five ways to do about it. Yeah. Yeah. Read the materials of my So you were. That's why we love this little earlier too about. And you're relating it every time I think about behaviors, I think about, when I was thinking about these things, a lot of it was talking about. And that a lot of our connections are, yeah, so we have like some students together in that. Serious and you're done. It's not the even reality. It is the first reality. I mean, it's very. I think it's to be diverse as a skill. It's a body skill. It's like, well, still like it hasn't really yet substantially changed. Since that, and I think it's needed to enable those to honor the offer. I mean, it's first like what we do. So they just end up being like, oh, programs, they're actually longer. That's transferred right now, it's not really talking, but at least and what a major is. Because we're currently defining major, like a degree is 100 majors. Major has this number of divisions. Like that is summer's that's exactly what I'm saying about it. Summer's the number. I don't think it's funny. You're so exactly. I mean, I think the way that we started, right, I don't know anything about it. I can only say these are because it's all about departments. And then departments are like, well, this is my department and I need to get these students in power so that I can to exist.
it's like, it's not just competition between the different institutions. It's competition in your people. It just feels like. Right, I kept back down to my vacation there, yes, I was like, that's something. Yeah, I mean, that's like, do this before I can get that. Wouldn't it be awesome if it was just like the expectation that you could work a little bit and then be able to get to them and enrichment and engagement, you know, to go into that, into behavior or in the life, right? Yeah, fun. Yes, that lifelong thing, absolutely. Yeah, so that there is no terminal exit. I think there's a whole especially when it comes to and with that reality, so many people used to say that I think it's part of the organization doesn't you know, there's things where you get you know, I just like to get about it. English patients. Okay. But honest, you know, as far as really getting they're not doing very well. They're not being right. It's like, it's yeah, but I mean, there's. That's but that's just an that's mentioned. But you. So you had like that. Wasn't that which is nice. So let's just take 1 minute. Maybe to uplift you to society. And you can't do that. So just take 1 minute. And that's the I mean, and so anything that we all area. The part of it, there's going to be more.
So,
I don't think we can be. Right, we do, we're not gonna be. But I would love to see.
Yes.
not try to. Yes, so that means also recognize it's about. And not make assumptions. Yeah. Big large scale assumptions. Yeah, but that was. College and I really difficult to find. I feel like the place we're starting is that we have such a this.
That makes sense. Good.
Food that I know. That you already know. Like, there's very out there. So that's maybe that's a good an actual situation. Yeah. Sounds all around. So I was okay. Very nice. I'm totally happy. Feels like. Because you're not.
My big goal is to fix the building itself.
We have really good friends.
I just think it's about sometimes this, what you thought about today. For all the rest of our area and for the lot. Access.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think, yeah, it's not too much. Yeah.
Last decades that have behavioral problems in the classroom. It's like wondering, how do you achieve these things under these circumstances? I mean, it's.
And we are back in the main room.
It's really hard. Thank you. All right, so we obviously will not be able to hear everything, all of the depth of your conversation. Sounds like folks were having some really great dialogue, but we'd love to hear a few key highlights. We won't do a formal report out from each group, just an open opportunity for individuals to share something that came up in their group discussion. And we'll also invite our virtual participants, if you want to come off mute and chime in, please feel free as well. Colleen is going to be taking notes into the slides so that we can capture those. So let's start with what resonates. So what were some things that that resonated with your thinking or your experience as you think about that themes and that stakeholder input?
But very quickly, a few that popped out for our group were equity, affordability, and the potential need for a kind of heavier hand for the HECC.
Okay, great. I want to make sure our logistics are working here for us to be able to see Colleen's screen. Colleen, are you?
Typing in, there's a little bit of a delay that we may need to exit out of full screen. Let's see if I can.
So by the heavier hand, I think the reference was to one of the themes that described the need for greater HECC, a greater HECC role in directing and coordinating.
Okay.
So the shorthand for that was heavier.
Listen. Got it. Okay. Yeah, thank you, man. That's the emphasis. Okay, there we go. Now we can see. All right. Excellent. Thanks for getting us going, Ben. What about for other groups, things that resonated for you? Yeah.
In contrast, our group talked a lot about themes 4 and 7 and the role of HECC in competition
Okay,
and the importance of aligning education and training programs with economic opportunity.
okay. Great, thank you. Thanks, Colleen, for capturing those. What would others want to share in terms of what resonated for you or your groups?
Just one word, tension.
Okay, yeah,
Then there's tension between the choices,
right,
the various choices out. There were a couple of specific ones.
yeah. Mhm, yep. That is true.
Okay, we also talked about affordability. I don't think we were super organized in going through categories of how that resonates, what surprises, but we tended with the two things we talked about to kind of get into the kind of complexity of how one would go about addressing them. So we kind of got into the weeds of the complexity of both, you know, of how the public perceives affordability and how we perceive affordability and what we actually have control over.
Right,
And trying to break that apart a little bit so that we can figure out how we can make a difference for us.
thank you. Oh, great, Richard.
I think there were only a couple of us, but I think one of the things highlighted was that I think only a minority of people actually highlighted that somehow or implied somehow that equity and broad societal goals like 2040 were somehow mutually exclusive. And I don't believe the majority of people think they're mutually exclusive in the sense that HECC needs to concentrate on both to be effective. And I think the other thing that I found in looking at literally, I don't know if I'm doing this right, but in looking at literally all of the displays of responses, is there were a very modest portion of the respondents that were at one end or the other end. Mm-hmm. For instance, in the issue of whether or not HECC had a role in competitiveness, there are a very modest portion of the respondents that said basically under no circumstances do they have a role. And also there were a very modest number who said, well, HECC should have the primary role here. Most of the people were in the middle. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. What about anything, and we can jump around, so if folks want to share more of what resonates, please feel free, but we'll also open it up for anything that surprised folks, anything that was different than you're expecting or than your own perceptions or experience. And it's okay if not. These were things that, yeah, are pretty evident and clear, but yeah.
Well, and maybe because we didn't pose the question, but what surprised me was there was no sense of shared responsibility with, you know, we want you to respond to workforce needs, but there was not a sense of how workforce might contribute to some of these things.
Okay.
Or institutions wanting, you know, have to advocate for more funds, and yet we know some institutions have huge endowments. Mm-hmm. But what does it mean to the contribution of the problem? So it kind of, but maybe we didn't ask what those things
that's
were.
a good point. I don't know that we necessarily.
Yeah, but I just realized there was no sense of shared responsibility of what the issues and problems were.
Okay.
Yes, I guess it's kind of surprised, but kind of not surprised. I mean, it's maybe a little different than that, but it's the idea that perhaps we're at an inflection point in our state that we've been doing things, whether we're the employer side or the education side, where we've been doing things and to the best of our ability as subject matter experts for what we do, but we're at this opportunity. And I think about what's happening in Hillsborough and different things going on around the state where we could really make a difference if we all had sort of a similar desire to see our state prosper and thinking about it from a higher level versus I gotta get what I get because there's, sort of only so many resources to go around. And so how do we, and that then made me go back to then that vision and mission could be a way of communicating out something that maybe unifies and helps to bring others along, on the journey that the HECC is on.
Yeah, it's been moving kind of out of that scarcity
Yeah,
mentality. Shared, compelling
out of silos.
direction. Yeah. Okay.
Just quickly, I felt like that resonates with some of our conversation over here that was around building community versus the reality of programs being somewhat competitive to be able to like stay alive even. And so that because of the general, landscape of the higher education situation in the state, that causes that tension even within programs. And that relates to communication too, and how that can coordinate.
Great. Thank you. Again, we can skip around, we can come back to other topic areas, but as you think about what we'll be moving into here shortly, starting to identify key goals or focus areas, outcomes, strategies, what do you want to take forward as key questions or considerations that this situation assessment raises for consideration in the strategic plan?
We spent, as I said earlier, a lot of time on themes 4 and 7, and I think what we identified is that there is very clearly a push-pull between not duplicating programs and improving accessibility.
Yeah.
And needing to explore that further. And then probably related are the implications of trends towards place-based learning, debt aversion as it relates to sort of the perceived value of higher education and the role of technology and how all of those relate to conversations about program competition and accessibility of programming.
Okay, thank you.
So we've already brought up in this discussion, the tension between not only the themes, but different silos that have existed. And so one thing that our group was talking about was just the overall, what we consider the slow pace of change and getting everyone on the same page and going in the same direction instead of remaining with, their entrenched historical interest and kind of resisting going forward.
Thank you. Yeah.
One that I just came up with was how we can make a smoother pathway between like a lot of the K-12 come up between K-12 and then going into higher education and then from higher education into the workforce. I think both are really important.
Yeah.
Also thinking about as we're the push to get people into workforce and then creating these pathways to get them there, but not thinking about growth after that. Specifically, we're never going to get diversity into leadership positions because they end up getting stuck at that, whatever that is that they go out into that workforce, which great, it's a great job, but.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that, post-secondary education doesn't stop. after bachelor's or even graduate degree.
Yeah, I don't know where to put this, so I haven't said anything. The structure of this exercise sort of pushes us towards identifying sort of individual things and which I think necessary. But I wasn't surprised, but I'm disappointed that within this the survey of things, you didn't see emerge any discussion about sort of what is the ways in which systemic change play a role in addressing affordability or addressing, we're pointing at some ways things out there and says that maybe we're part of the problem, and what would we do to address that? You know?
Yeah. That raises a question for me immediately, because I think the same thing on the equity and diversity. When I picture things like this toward the end, not at this step, I always picture a grid. So, I mean, I think we're stronger. I liked your question, your framing questions, for example, on the equity, because they all are things that don't call out for let's have a separate equity goal. Instead, you see, okay, we're beyond that. We're running that across. We're running these values across everything that we do. And I think the same thing about structure, that structure should be, or processes, maybe there are things that are questions underneath each header at the end, underneath each big thing we're going to do. How does or should this affect structure or processes? And the same thing about how do we pursue how do we engage or how do we accomplish our equity goals as part of this? Your questions, your two questions.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to end up where we have a separate thing. What about structure?
Absolutely.
So I would just say, well, we identified the most important things. It'd be nice to identify what's the through line.
Yeah.
Or through lines.
Well, and Greg, I don't know if it was something that you're also just acknowledging is, even just higher education, post-secondary education, not operating not thinking kind of within that silo and wondering about the more systemic relationships across.
Yeah, this is simplistic, but I just think, I think about Kate, we're focused on K-12 for quite a while. I just always found it funny, weird sense of the word, that when we start thinking about education quality, we almost always assume the unit of the classroom. That means we presume a certain educational model, which I think limits us from thinking more broadly about how do we actually move forward. So I want to say, I'm not antagonistic to that. I'm just saying we limit our ability to think forward because we without even thinking assume certain structures.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. We weren't talking about the unit of the classroom, but we were talking about the degree and the credit hour as the units that seem to just so that all the changes, it's hard to be bold when your changes have to fit into 180 credits for a 4-year degree or, into those kind of categories. So I guess a key consideration would be how can we be bolder in thinking about, and I mean, it sounds cliche to be let's innovate. But I think I really like thinking outside of the existing structures and not assuming that is the way that is going to work. I mean, sure, it's going to work for the short term, but in the longer term, we need to think beyond that.
Yeah, I just think it's, just sort of a humorous way of approaching it. Don't you think it's amazing that every disciplinary area can be taught in 4 years?
Yeah.
Teach you to write critical reason in 24 credits. Doesn't make any sense.
You and raise you.
Thinking about that. in reflecting on what we've heard here, so much of the way that we post the questions and the feedback we got sort of presumed existing systems and silos, and a lot of the responses like, well, we need to, how do you manage these systems better? I mean, I think one thing that the commission has tried to do historically is really center its focus on the learner, right? So our job, but like ultimately this is about the learner, and then we sort of manage or touch or design or influence the systems around that unit of focus, rather than taking as our unit of focus, okay, the universities, the colleges. You saw this in the responses, the way we talk about colleges, the system of colleges, of universities, maybe workforce training providers. If we sort of become less, sort of more neutral about all of that, or more open, or more, think of that as all more permeable, I think, and remain focused on the learner and their needs, I think it may open up some creative thinking.
Yep.
When I was looking at the list of the 9 themes, I mean, what jumped out to me was really how you could almost group them from one end of the continuum to the other. So want innovation, you want us to convene, you want us to push the edge of the envelope, whatever. But you also want us to preserve the status quo and fund the existing structure. Okay. And I literally asked the question of my group. I'm like, do you think it's a person asking for both? Two different groups of people asking for that, because I don't know.
Yeah.
Please.
I'm going along with the question about how we have structured higher education and how we think of it in these siloed and distinct units. We are questioning whether, if we are to evolve, what that would look like and what we would have to break down in order to build something different. And I think one of the key areas that really I find continuously frustrated with is how we fund higher education. We think of it as an individual responsibility, and when we do assist, it's helping students figure out the different sources of money they can find to cover it, and they pay it back. And it's how to improve upon helping them find resources they'll have to pay back eventually. And that seems to me so counterproductive, because we're not thinking, can we educate students because it's in the public good, without them having to pay back, but maybe putting back into the community with the resources and the skills they acquire. So is there an exchange mechanism? We will allow them to be educated and provide the resources, and the payback is you enter the workforce and you are committed and you give back.
Comment.
Yes, Richard.
I had a comment on innovation. I think innovation is fine as long as it's well thought out and people actually do all their due diligence. I spent about 10 years, which if there anybody here that are teachers, and I'm not a teacher, did about that, under the Education Act for the 21st century in Oregon, which was not very well thought out, which actually was imposed on school districts statewide based on a single paper at a single conference that a former speaker put into law. So, and I think the other thing is when you change how we offer programs, I think you've got to get the acceptance both of, the universities, students, and the outside world. I don't know if anybody has become involved in the 2 years versus 4 years nursing education debate. That is a debate that you perhaps should think about before you get into it. It's very hard to resolve.
Thank you. I don't, and Susan, you may have, Colleen may have some thoughts on this too. I think something like hearing what you're saying, hearing what you raised, right? Something that's coming up for me, because, we have the benefit of working with multiple organizations and agencies across the state and similar processes. So, you know, right now, we're working with Business Oregon on their strategic plan. We're working at the local level with workforce investment boards on their strategic plans. We're working with community colleges, right? You know, so we have this visibility into what's coming up for folks. And I can tell you that right now, especially for state agencies, we're working with Department of Human Services. There is a lot of emphasis on the importance of clarifying our role, our lane, because of all of these other things that are being asked of agencies to influence or play a role in influencing. Now that makes sense, that everyone wants to be clear about what they can influence and impact. And as someone who lives in this state, is raising children in this state, is also concerning to just wonder, like, well, who is going to, if everyone's saying like that's not in our lane, but we're all, you know, all of these things are impacting all of our systems. So, you know, I think for me, maybe to your point, or part of what you were bringing up, is there's another thing that's coming up is we need to really define like what's the full ecosystem. What are our shared goals in this area, in economic development and education, and, you know, and what are our roles? I don't necessarily, and I just might not be seeing it, see as much of we need to create like a shared vision, you know, across all of these systems, and then define our roles to make sure that we are actually really like influencing in the way where we can have the most impact. So you know, that's just something maybe is like, where can we break the mold in terms of how we're collaborating and coordinating like beyond the, you know, silos that we've stayed in. So I don't know, Susan, any insights or thoughts on that just based on what we're seeing, but it is interesting to just see some of these same things coming out across the state in different areas.
I wonder if there's opportunity for that in workplace,
What, you know,
in terms of the emphasis and how to achieve it, and, you know, if we
right.
look at it together. That big topic of workplace needs and an economic plan, is that an opportunity to break the mold and approach it differently?
Yeah.
So far down the road, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge that I've felt in that, in that idea has just been who's the convener, right? Like, if we're gonna have a big conversation about the state's economic future and it's a plan for the economy and for the associated workforce needs, like that's, you know, we could, the HECC could say, well, that's gonna be us, but honestly, we're a piece of that, we're an important part of that, but that's not our.
Yeah.
We can't shoulder that, it's not even, I think, prudent for us to say, we're the conveners, we're the leaders, right?
Yeah.
Is it Business Oregon? Yeah, they're important too, but.
Spoiler alert, it's on their strategic plan.
All right.
So you're just taking the ground around it, and they are.
Forward to.
Well, we want to make sure to give you all a break. Yes.
On the question about who would take leadership on convening and who's responsible for what, I firmly believe that education is part of the social infrastructure and it prepares people for the workforce, but not just for the workforce. It prepares people as citizens. And so from that perspective, it is an anchor. And when we look at research about education, early education, all the way through, about how families thrive, not just economically, but socially, we know the ROI on early childhood education, on good middle school, high school, post-secondary degree, and good credentials. So for me, the anchor is the education as social infrastructure, and out of there, it radiates for the economic benefit, the social benefit, the creativity, the innovation. I'm not making an argument that HECC should be the convener, but I think it is important to understand the anchoring role that education, not just post-secondary education, but education plays in any society when it gets to be as large as we are.
Yeah, one more comment, yeah.
I was just gonna say, on this tension between economy and education, we are doing some of that work, and where HECC does seem to have a role is in informing the education and training pathways, accessibility to the education and training pathways that are responsive to the economic need. And so I think it's another tension to add to the list. You run the risk of, if we're all playing in different sandboxes, that we're actually advancing the siloing as opposed to pulling together the parts that need to be having the conversation.
And make a quick, it's just kind of an observation, about the interplay and coming off of what you said too, is that we, like, the human product, you know, isn't just a product, and, it's similar to what Cheryl, talked about this morning, that, you know, about the community that is created in university. And that isn't the same experience in, for instance, a CTE program or a workforce related program that's specifically designed around a product, like work, like direct labor related product, but that greater societal benefit also involves the less burden on healthcare and because of a healthy society as a whole, when we have community, and that should ultimately be supported, not just by the workforce industry, but by the healthcare industry and others as well, because we all benefit.
Right, I'm gonna head to break, let me do a quick time check. What do you think, Sue?
Yeah.
That's maybe five upstairs. Yeah, so we'll take a break until 2:05. Thanks, everyone.
I didn't say.
I know.
We are, and they are the top of the.
Thank you. Wow, that's a real.
And you know, we just was like, I was so fantastic. Hope you all had a good break. As Sarah mentioned, I'm Susan Karofsky, I'm with the Radio Group. And we're just huddling a little bit in the break, and I just wanted to, as we started to we're gonna start to go into your work time, to start to build the goals and the outcomes and the strategies. I had to share something. I'm a believer in system change. Who's a believer in systems change? All right, we got a room full of believers, Sarah. I'm fortunate enough I've been with Coraggio for coming up on 10 years here, and for 6 out of those 10, I helped the Oregon Health Authority drive systems change to reduce chronic disease and do chronic disease prevention throughout the state. And I saw it happen. I saw them bring clinics and payers and, the public health authority together to try to figure it out. And so I've seen it happen. I'm a believer, and I'm glad you're all believers too. So let's talk about your plan elements. As Ben, I think, mentioned, you've done some work on vision mission. Ben's going to share some feedback in a second here of what he's heard on those drafts. Values, got some work to do there. The planning team's going to do work. We're not going to talk about values today. The vision is your why. It's your reason for being, right? Your mission's your what. What are you doing in support of that broader vision? And your values are your how. What do you want to see show up every day as you're doing that work? We're going to focus today on your goals, your outcomes, and your strategies. Your goals are big, right? Those you want to be fairly stable over your 5-year time horizon. Your outcomes are going to be specifically how are we going to know we're on track? How are we measuring the success? And then your strategies are those more finite discretionary projects or programs that are going to come in and out to move the needle on those outcomes and make those goals happen, ultimately in service to your mission and your vision, right? It all comes together. It's a beautiful stew that all works together with a lot of delicious ingredients. Let me see front. There we go. So there's a little bit of leveling you're going to be working at today. Your goals are your big buckets, if you think about it that way. And then your outcomes are your measures and your strategies. So you're going to start out with your goals and you're going to work your way kind of down the hierarchy and the altitude, we call it. And here's just these are drafts. They're not right, but these are thought starters, right? Higher education is affordable for all. It's a nice big bucket, right? How would you measure it? You'd measure it by a decrease in learners facing unaffordable costs. You might want to smart that up and make it a little bit more, measurable, but that's just a draft. And your strategy would be increase the number of Oregon Opportunity Grant support. That makes sense? This is just drafts. You're going to make them do some great work when you're in your groups. Now, Sarah went through the insights, and that's one input. I think she mentioned this earlier. You also want to think about what are some of the elected officials' priorities for the state. What are some other opportunities you might have? What's some of the context of some of the things, external forces happening that are influencing your work? And this all must be achievable within a 5-year time frame. We just keep that. No problem. Again, systems change believers, right? Can make magic happen. So let's just take a quick look at the draft vision. I'm not going to read it because I think you've all seen it and worked on it, right? So we, as part of the assessment, asked, what do you think? Right? And you can see here, about 66% loved it, liked it. So the theme is the interested parties generally liked the draft vision, but they had a few areas of feedback. And that quote on the bottom was one of the areas of feedback. Vision statement should encapsulate, not list. This feels too wordy and complex to inspire. So that was kind of the initial feedback from the
situation assessment award. Give you a minute to look at that. And then, a draft mission, we tested that also. We asked for feedback on that. You can see here, if I do my math correctly, about 67% liked it. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, 48% loved it and liked it. So a little bit lower on the mission. And the theme here is that the interested parties had mixed feelings about HECC's draft mission and would like to see it more cogently describe the commission's unique role. So you can see just a quote there that was pulled, pretty jargon related and may not be clear to the average person what HECC does. Something more explicit about gathering stakeholder feedback. So, give me a minute here to look at the current draft.
That's very we're gonna shift into the.
We're gonna
feedback for commissioners now.
to share
Yes.
kind of the feed, you've refined them, right, Ben?
I'll explain what we did here. So what Guthrie will project is feedback that we received from 8 commissioners whom were given a few options for the vision and mission that we developed based on the feedback that we received through the situation, the insight report. So this is gonna be, it's hard to read, especially on this display, Guthrie. I don't know if there's any, but I will summarize it. For the vision statement, we asked commissioners, and 8 of you have taken this survey, to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, the current draft, the draft that we asked our partners to provide feedback on that you just saw. So the current draft, and then 2 alternatives. The first alternative, so number 2, will be, don't scroll there yet, will be a reworded attempt to be clearer and less jargony, but similar length version of the vision statement. And the third option, so current, a reworked but similarly long, and then a third, a vastly simplified and shorter option. And 8 commissioners responded over the last few days to those 3. You see the results here from testing the first current option on a scale of 1 to 10, a range of responses as low as 2. That's 1 person at 2, and it looks like 3 people at 8. Couple people at 9, so it's a certainly a range. Scroll down to and an average rating of 6.9. You scroll down to the next. So this was an edited version. So it's again, you can't read it on the screen probably. It's similar length. It uses 3 bullet points, but it's been edited. Tries to be clearer, tries to be less jargony, and it definitely scored better. So you see the 7.13, and now the lowest score of the commissioners who responded looks like is a 5. So all in the 5 to 9, 5 being neutral, 9 or 10 being the maximum. And then the third was the vastly simplified. And here again, we see a real, we see some folks who it actually got 2 10s, which I don't think any of the earlier options had gotten, but it also got 2 2s. So y'all can't agree on this. And its overall rating is a 6.25. There's just a lot of polarization. We're not really going to discuss this today. This will come back to the planning team to sort of consider this feedback from commissioners. I'll also note, if you're not one of the 8 commissioners who's taken this, please feel free. It's still open. Guthrie confirmed. You're still welcome to go back after today. But if you have taken it, don't take it again. So moving on the mission, no double voting. Moving on the mission. We only tested 2 options. The current option, which is the same one that our partner is providing feedback on that you just saw from Susan. And that, you see the rating here, 6.63, distributed between maybe 4 and 9. I can't quite read, but, and then a reworded, clearer, I think, option with different language scored better. Considerably better. I think this is significant. There is one score that looks like it might be below the median, maybe just a 4, but you've got 7 other respondents who are at 7 or above. So again, commissioners, if you haven't taken it, please feel free to, and then core planning team will use this feedback to come up with our proposal for the commission's additional consideration in a couple. That's what we got.
Thank you, thank you. So good progress on those two plan elements, continued refinement to happen. But, so far, so good in making progress on that. So, Sarah is going to bring this back up. And before we break you into your groups, okay, thank you. We're just gonna we're gonna help you kind of, you know, orient yourself before you break into your groups and you start to do your goals, your outcomes, and your strategies. So, based on what you heard from the chair and other things that you kind of heard in the conversations, and we're just gonna ask you, because we're running a little bit late, we want to break you into your group, so I'm just gonna ask you to jot some notes for yourself to take into your breakout groups to these two questions. So jot notes to yourself to these two questions. What are your key takeaways and insight? And what might be a planned theme that answers the question, above all else, this plan must focus on? Above all else, this plan must focus on. We're just gonna take a couple minutes, jot notes to yourself on those two things before we break you into your groups.
Much stronger. Much stronger.
I don't usually put sugar in coffee, but I'm doing that now.
Got it. It's been your nice pick to get you through the afternoon, so that's awesome. All right, if everybody is ready, I'll kind of queue up I'm gonna queue up both what you're gonna do. I'm gonna give you kind of an overview for our remaining time together. So, there are stations around the room. There are 4 stations, and at each station, there is a list of, groupings. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get it with your group, and you're gonna wanna take your Post-its. And I know for some of you along the back wall, you don't have these yet, so I'll come and bring them to you. And your Sharpies. You can leave your stickers. You don't need your stickers just yet. You want your Post-its and your Sharpies. And you're gonna get with your group and you're gonna work on your boards. And your board has got an opportunity and an area for you to identify 3 goals. What must the HECC focus on over these next 5 years? So we're constraining you to no more than 3 goal areas. And again, remember, the goals are those big buckets, right? And when you're thinking about altitude. Each goal area, we want you to identify 1 or 2, no more than 2 measurable outcomes per goal. And then you will work, you're going to kind of work horizontally. What are the 3 strategic priorities for that goal? So when your board is complete, you'll have no more than 3 goals, no more than 6 outcomes, and no more than 9 strategies. And again, You want to look at it horizontally. So it should cascade. Your goals, how you're going to measure the success of that goal, and what are the 3 discrete kind of projects or programs to help make that happen. We're going to give you about, we'll see how you're doing. Sarah and I are going to roll out about 3:30. Got a good amount of time. There you go. That's feel good. You got a good amount of time. You might not need that big.
Sorry, not for you.
It means like 15 minutes to decide the fate of the state.
That's right. That would have been unrealistic, right? It would be a little bit more time than 15 minutes. Then at 3:30, well, again, and you might not need the whole time, it's about an immediate. Then what you're gonna do at 3:30, you're gonna take a break somewhere in that time. We're gonna do what's called a gallery walk for 20 minutes. You're gonna go to the other stations and see what the other groups did. And that's right. You'll star the stuff you love that the other groups did. Okay, I want to make sure everybody can hear my instructions before we break off. And Sarah and I will be, giving you guidance. We'll be watching the time and time and time. You're gonna go on your route, you're gonna do your board. We're gonna tell you when it's time to start roaming around. Then you're gonna roam around and you can write questions on your Post-its for what other groups did. You can start if you like it. You can get really creative with your Post-its and give other kind of indicators of your satisfaction or questions you might have with what the other groups did. Who has a question about what I am asking you to do and what you're going to be doing over the next hour?
Can I just make a suggestion that when folks get into small groups, make sure you know who, because we didn't do introductions at the outset. No, not everybody knows everybody else in the room.
Yeah.
So when you get into those groups, just make sure
Take a
you.
moment.
Yes. Right, didn't I say
You
that?
want to read those off?
Yeah, sure.
Before you get up, I just want to say, for our virtual participants, Colleen has got a electronic whiteboard with this replicated there. And then when you're doing the gallery walk, you'll be able to see what the virtual team has been doing also, okay? Before Guthrie reads off the groups, because then people I think are gonna start to break apart. What other questions does anyone have about what I'm asking you to do right now? No questions? Guthrie, do you mind reading off the groups?
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan. Group A is going to be over here. That's Greg Heyman, Teresa Martinez, Ramona Rodemaker, Amy Cox, Jennifer Purcell. Group B in that corner, Julia Steinberger, Sandy Rowe, Rachel Bisco, Kyle Thomas, Susie Hosey, Veronica Dujon. Group C over here, Arnold Fajardo, Jen Proctor Andrews, Beth Cannon, Donna Llewellyn, Jim Pinkard, and Ann Mercereau. Group D, Emily Sinnet, Gail Yamasaki, Juan Baez Arevalo, Tom Reel, and I Hardigan. And then Group E, fully remote, will be Natalie Arnott, Winter Thomas Apelli, Richard Devlin, and Rudy Ann Rivera Lindstrom.
Okay, we don't have any final issue before we break.
So it's like,
We just turn around and go around answering questions and also practice and see how you're doing.
We can take this. Just to use the interference. Okay. Funny crap. All right. That's fine.
Just like my favorite question.
I think we're great.
Yeah.
Legal. So I have one. One for me is affordability.
Yeah.
It's a huge. Right? To make it more sustainable. What's the problem? That's,
Don't recognize this one.
Different ways to spice that.
Yeah, in fact, I was.
So I think so.
One of the, if I were to say that detention and graduation, completion.
But it's not.
In my mind, it's like. What percentage of cost of attendance do you give an aid?
It doesn't work. So that's kind of how I would put that. It's like you said, I heard that the way that they plan to is similar approach to affordability and understand the different factors that go into affordability, not just.
I think that's. Right, one time, yeah, and I think, I mean, in my, I do, I think it is worth for having a section for our success. Yeah, success. Sometimes they are not trends, you know, and I think something. Yeah.
So it's a not.
Here.
So like things just some sugar, not like, oh, it's really later. Or it's like, so how she issued the selection which actually are related to the success and I'm thinking like so much more difficulty. Sense of it is like, it shows up in the shows, it shows up in and gives an ability to focus, to that having complex situations in their families, so there's like lots of. Right. I mean, I this is it, I can only, I'm sorry, this is anecdote, look at it. Graduate students, it's like, I mean, is it about just organic? Or is it about It's really impairing faculty. I mean, to deliver the education.
Don't see that.
It's also like the knowledge.
Well, it's more than retention.
Media to the extent that it's being used.
All of the other methodologies.
Yeah, I wonder about that.
Yeah. Impact.
Yeah. It's so much less. If we want one green or you
That is that negative media conversation, politics, or any issue.
This is you're seeing it.
They've always had college funds growing up.
I mean, let's just. There's things like
Something's around success. I mean,
You want to measure.
all they're doing is somewhere.
Today's movies are shit. It's a really good.
What else?
Yes.
Yeah. It's important to grab share.
Yeah.
Yes. I read to a specific.
All right. I don't even have the.
Yeah.
It's our affordability, success, technology, or like.
Perception from that. Define the value of education. That's the.
Defines the value.
You don't think that's.
Depending on.
Can we affect marketing or the message?
Barriers to like spike understanding personally what so they, but it also could be language, and also the geography, and also the
Knowledge or something. And actually, I do think there is a way to influence that. Like, but because the good to it is, it was a lot of. I'll let somebody else.
Maybe a different one. So it could be a.
Is the largest.
Yeah.
Where you change that accessibility population.
I don't even think what.
Population in terms of-
Small part of it.
You also have
Making-
graduates.
I
mean, even if you do it. You've got a raise.
Right.
So it's good for and so it's really.
Do that in terms of a strategy. Some of the.
Versus size goals or something like that.
Individual.
look at them differently. But
It would like to be
Something.
doesn't also.
We're less than. Right, then we can.
Second goal would be students in our values. It's not lacking on the second goal, students in
Improving individual and prosperity.
Were you thinking successful?
Yeah. Usually that's like.
I think I just.
Great conversation.
The goal needs to be a statement, right?
Yeah.
I would like, so, well, I'm making a work right, say words, and then we all try to statements.
Okay, there you go.
But I think, I think what you had, I think you had it. That's like a vision thing that I passed. So right now,
Goal learners have the support
Are
are
successful and they have.
Yes.
I think each idea that's answer. How things on that fail.
If you took
Access.
strategies.
A strategy would then, so just to make sure I think a strategy has to be to find, yeah, you're talking broad, but you can definitely, yeah, definitions that are, yeah, beyond degree of vision.
Yeah.
Very unnecessary value.
Right. Return on investment.
Yeah. So like you're, and then we, that is.
That's not.
You know.
Nobody wants to do that.
So you're looking at.
So you have the. Which comes out.
Secondary.
Success, so you're going to here and that's your success.
Where you have a job.
Does that make sense? Transfers.
Right.
Oh, they got a job.
And so I can see like. And we, you know, you know, it's like, you have to like. Try to go, like, yeah, I mean, some people just not Korean. I know, so, you know.
That is if there were.
What I know. Which one is actually, in terms of.
Yeah.
So you have your slides here.
So out there, the completion rate is. So they want to go with these loans, so they want to be. Yeah, driver, you know, whatever. But what is the, you know, or your, that's what I think about. So like, how are you that it's.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like, I really even.
So there's that.
Oh, yeah,
It appeals to this. Legislator.
Can you give about the kind of patient?
Yeah, I think that's where.
Yeah, so I think we have the completion rates transition area.
So a gap's got one out.
So there's like some measures between students to get it.
Yeah. That's how you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, like, you
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh, and we
Well, I said.
In terms of like.
Yeah. Nuance, it's nerves, like interesting boundaries, yeah.
That's like a, I really a lot of survey and like. Quite a lot of my students, yes, I'm looking for something. And, you know, something is you forgot to.
The boundary, its value is such.
A couple of ways to do that. One way is you increase and expand.
Yeah, that would be a strategy.
It's a receiving need based.
If you move backward, so you could go anywhere you wanted to, but if you came back. Well, then they had made a choice. That's the thing about that. So I'm back to not to that application. As what they made that they want. It's not just say access to education.
And then that would be like everyone. It's what I like. I like the idea too. So what? Just looking at it from the face. But like, oh, it's on your phone. That's my.
Costs are not dependent on your education. Yes, yes, right. Yes, it's that kind of thing, right? Yes.
We can get there. I don't worry.
Jack is relatively easy to cover.
Yeah.
Says to.
Well, I think we should just, we got the practical and
That's a great. We do more success.
One of the things that we know the research shows that regarding
one of the goals you have to
that they were ability.
So you're not like constrained by.
Yeah, your economic status.
So if it's very motivation, one on this, how do we get?
Let's say they know my name.
They're like economic situation. But I don't. It's like fantastic.
Much better than mine.
Now, I mean, no, I would think are because government identify, you know, what's what I think about it.
There are.
In the levels that.
Where do you?
It's not dependent on where you start.
Right? Right, like.
For the state, this like I would, what I really need to do is.
Actually, go the other direction.
Is like, you know, this open. I'm thinking about like, you know, what I really want to do is have, but I can't do that because or I Tuesday and training or other certificate programs.
The only thing I can.
Fever, I like being out, like, I need to have a job, like 6 months, I can't afford to take the 2 years. Yeah, that's exactly. You could have to do whatever. Still, be a third. I'm there.
So where it's going, but we don't know yet, we're just.
Streamline, just kind of like streamline this relationship. Because that's both us. Schools, I mean, just kind of, that's what we were supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, we do.
It's like, no, it can be, no, I mean, I mean, it's a strategy to decrease the short term.
I'd like another suggestion.
I like speaking on only the system. I know, not business. I thought about the economics of, I feel like you're using the higher education should be overlaid the innovation because. Process change the job.
Yes, and we did, what's the word?
All right.
It's gonna make a completely different suggestion.
What's that?
If we go to different directions. But what do you,
That those-
it's this is what the part that I wrote down is technology.
Yeah, so the.
And I hear that, yeah, which is the technology sometimes it's going to.
You're right. And then this, it's like, what are you gonna do? Right, so we're like the doing, right, but we started. And
This like
Applications for the job market.
Right. And it's not like.
Around like it's.
Leverage technology for processing.
It's gonna take over, I know, it could be functional, like with everybody.
Yeah, you know, okay.
Well, the council.
Technology development.
Well, then we
Expand resources.
Maybe turn it into in long-term funding.
So
If I were put on goal, it would be a thing like.
expand those.
And that's it, like, you know, service that right now, it's like the student service and buses used to.
Yes, and that goes with the.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Culturally.
I missed the dash.
I think you were talking about.
I was thinking about it differently. I was thinking. Individual. I mean, there's nothing.
It's like, you know, it's like the balance between
Individuals, prosperity,
investing in human.
but there's like,
No, we
access
can
for affordability for
technology,
individuals.
the modern
Access for individuals, affordability for individuals, equity for communities, and economic state.
More.
Is that can we really say?
Yeah, like just.
We don't have it, but that, and yet we can bring back to
This for all, right? We just like just recognize, so we don't want to have sort of dangerous now. Public improvement, whenever funding is not exists.
Yeah, maybe it should never be funded by a legislature.
So these are like, there are, so there's a new kind of ceiling, like, we work on sharply.
Education goal, right? Is that the way you say it?
Affordability.
Well, we can finish this.
Higher education contribution.
So what's that? So what's academic counseling?
But supported and vested. That'll do the marketing piece.
More holistically, generally more holistically, what's the needs of the person. That's.
Okay.
And then the role.
That's the second.
About the needs of the interest.
And then before we define that, we have to go back to.
Yeah, we don't scramble, put it.
So very wide as possible, higher ed, you know, I'm saying higher ed and workforce together. Society or background. Okay, so this is not just the individuals, but broad. We're going into outcomes.
Thinking maybe.
Free education.
Long-term investment strategy.
So I.
So what's a realistic?
Is to adapt to.
Maybe going backwards or what?
So like the. Right now,
Not the deficit, I have.
support
I
the.
don't love it when other agencies.
The offers. I was wanting to be fast.
Everybody is working. I hate.
Would it have? The infrastructure that a society will have to maintain. I don't think we succeed in.
To every law. So, but the whole.
Right. Secondary.
Okay. So, then what does that?
The shared responsibility.
Yeah.
But they will.
I mean, there is a certain amount of. Or they'll merge.
It's not like say, it's like, what is the marketing?
That's the.
Strategies.
And I think that should be.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like, what's happening.
That's the goal.
Right now, where.
Yeah, I mean, the most. Leading to institutions like.
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah, so it's about the teamwork is both a result of the.
That's a goal for higher education. Oh.
So I must
So I was wondering if it came to any.
The strategy is
Online.
demonstrate, like this is the verb we do not.
We should be goals, we should be positive.
Yeah.
Okay, and now.
Yeah, I mean, what if we did a similar thing to what we did here?
That's the. That is the part. That is the absolute part.
They, you know, there are.
Okay, so the
jobs
things
that
that
is our society needs, you know, and then there's.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
get it in.
Anyone else? Because like, it would be like increased funding, right? Some sort of.
No, but I just want to make sure.
I think, like, that's whatever it drives.
So economic contributions, cultural contributions. I mean, what if we just separate it that way? So, okay, economic, we have economic contributions are supported, right?
This one should stay.
Yeah, but we need more.
You know, there are internships, you know, there's good.
Time on this level.
Yeah, the culture, humanity, and experiments, and there's.
We have strategies.
For everyone to contribute to communities. I don't know, it's one, five pages.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
let's just put it out there. Let's just put it out there. I mean,
we're not like.
we got time.
Coffee. My mouth and I'm like. Like, that might look nice, it just feel like different than here, but like. It's more in levels. I don't like. I don't either. I don't think it's.
Produce implies to me one way.
We're going to be financially.
Something on the end, you know.
Yeah.
On the heart and soul.
If we go this way and it's individual community state.
Are supported.
Individual level.
Yeah.
Is that where something like?
So.
We're going to be.
Okay.
With AI, we're addressing AI with.
Don't get your picture, but. So.
Yeah.
And the strategy. Feel it.
So this is not a.
Oh, no, I think the strategy.
That's the intent. So.
So this is.
I like that, something. Yeah.
So this is zero students facing unmet need, like no, like.
All right. So we're gonna bring in the coffee.
It might need to.
Should be.
No, it's just the.
Position. Right.
You know, actually, like, because that could also.
Are you right?
It's just like a time where we offer.
I reposition,
Yes, like, there's for some of the, in the leader too, like, also, yes. So, no.
So like our dinner settings and down.
But I wanted some of those to be so right. Yeah. Beyond.
Side windows and good things, yeah.
This is like
Leader is right.
differentiated sports. This outcome. Differentiated.
Emotionally can be adopted.
Right.
Repositioning.
Whatever that means to be successful.
So it was.
So for different.
Oh,
So
so
think
for a strategy. Okay, I
And
got it.
here's the thing you have. Short term.
Somebody might screw.
I think, so, like, I think I have that. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Now we have the goals. Yeah, so be like.
That's right. I mean,
All these.
Leverage, they know, Jesus,
think communication has gotta be.
Is there a transparent?
It's like.
Yeah. Transparency and we think parity.
I don't know if it's like, what is transparency? It's
Stuff like that would be.
Well, we talked about that burden of the great potential, right? You have a little. Finding what you need to fulfill that. What does that, what is it, just what is
I thought that, I thought maybe the strategy. of-
Yeah.
So, because it was.
I know.
Yeah. That was council.
We got,
It's just.
can use more things.
It could be also put right. I think you'd probably actually. A mix of knowledge of value AI and value the human inside things.
It is that connection, right? It's that relationship. Strategy, so it's coordinated, it's coordinating work, it's supporting.
Higher connectivity works.
Of the employer. Whatever.
You know, what's
Yes, and a lot of, some of it is like, one of the things, some of it, like, you have a year doing college on and beyond. Right, and then.
Yeah.
Maybe
Let's see what about this.
Okay, so now we're. And this is the.
Something about.
Well, I mean, what, like, how would we create, that seems like a.
I mean, one of the things that I see with this is just like, I mean, there's so many good examples. I just never did this, so this team is, so like, so maybe we try to job and it's, you know, I mean, I don't know, I mean, it's like.
I like that. So like,
Start doing that, then it's food, right?
well, it's like, I don't want, and what I do not think I do is that you have like, you know, every team people. I think it's not even and you know, you could put the example is when people are subject to people.
Well, you want to. Mentoring. Yeah. Coaching and mentoring.
Then let's hearing about the one strategy that.
Craig. Reduce credit loss.
Simplify pathways.
Participation rate.
You say.
To reach out to
Yeah, so that
Some
connects.
people drop out because I was.
So there is this technology.
So it's not.
Well, those differentiators.
Yeah.
We want to see something about the music somewhere.
We can walk around.
Say it's a mentoring.
So one guy that's us.
Yeah, the resources. I was just being very broad. Yes, because yes, we know.
Well, that's right.
I mean,
It's also really important for returning adults. Things
I don't-
in the pandemic, just that conversation.
Money if you don't.
Yeah, so there's got something up there.
Maybe that's. I would just be like, just keep going.
Oh,
There you go.
well,
Yeah.
and from lucky that we shot. I do think that.
You know, like I didn't have the.
It's not like you can't, okay, keep the need. 12 communities of campus to succeed.
Staying out.
They've already rules.
Sport related.
Being better outcome.
The better people means better outcomes. No, I'm just kidding.
Not more people.
I think.
Keep bringing it in.
Delivered on the education training and
So you already decided that last.
Yeah, I mean, they don't.
So.
Yeah.
They providing grants, you know.
Have a hard time. Well, it's that.
Yeah. You see that. Friendships are formed like words.
Go to the next place.
One of them, like, when you,
Does that make sense?
new data, like, you're sending it to the. Expand your message.
Let you go to the place.
I mean, so, yeah, like, there's a way to brand, like, it's like 10 is really important, and you are, it's like the first year experiences, and those tension college about, right? We have that.
Yeah, saying.
And that's so,
That's
better is there.
That's what we said.
Yeah.
And if I was
One thing is to the.
and they got required.
That's tracking, because I just remember we had.
Yeah. Didn't get it either. Maybe that's.
What about the community adult environment? So it's not a traditional setting.
I mean, that's so.
With
I think somebody who starts at online. So the online program is
And we don't get.
that same location.
She's not screening.
Yeah, we hear that, somebody was talking about how.
lawyers.
That's how students are showing up, Southern even, they're showing up more and more in non-face-to-face. But there's not, it's only like face-to-face, it's easy to back to them that I agree. Yeah, the steps, it's like better permission here, and learning experience together.
Yeah.
And then to do that,
I'll make sure that.
Communication, I mean, clear communication is clear communication about how. Exactly.
It's like understanding what you need and where it's right,
Yeah.
like. And I think that there's no advice, it's not just, here's like a list of support services that they're doing.
Yeah.
Often the learners.
This is going on with me.
Not quite, but.
Yeah. So like, I'm having that, I think there's one thing. And so I'm just going to sit and suffer. I'm a failure. I'm the only person who appreciates everybody. So that's, if you don't get up, it's a challenge.
And all of these.
Right? And that's great.
Okay, so like, you know, is to.
Where they're located.
What is language? Responsible, I mean, just add, right, culturally responsive. But we got that up there. Yeah.
I mean, it's heavily like, it's like finding. To me, that's the time.
Because it's good point, we've talked about affordability being bigger than just the college class. So when you like it, it's how big is the bigger aspect.
Not.
You haven't talked about is being how an institution.
So what is strategy?
Regional one. Actually, we don't want to, that's.
Yeah, we see all this.
Institutional sustainability.
How we use.
It's our funding.
How can they find that?
Right? It's like, I just think, we're doing this. Yeah, I know. And that's what.
I mean, we should. We are, but I think that should be, it's not like a strategy or it was just like.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's a. Yeah, it's like, that's like how there's meetings, it's like, it's almost like pushing the. This would be, you're still like, it's still like somehow their responsibility.
Yeah, I was thinking of this concept of central.
But this is already existing.
The system.
Those two are
And we see here, we figure out the economies of scale that could replace it.
Yeah.
Could be a. I don't know.
No, we, like, just, I mean, you have to there's gotta be.
Our staff should think of literally at the door that, prepared, we people live there and you work towards trying to read and go to school.
No, and we have a care.
I mean, what is the difference? I mean, yes, we did it.
More than that.
Could have a little bit of that. But not.
Yeah.
I mean, so like, I don't know, so like that's especially in first areas with.
Oh, I just saw
Maybe let's, yeah, it's been around longer. And another area, this is a deep discussion, and it was in the last one, and it was, I don't know, I'm just trying to like, why are
The actual thing.
why are we still prioritizing how engineering?
The kind of college choice thing is pretty.
How are we defining them? I see it's it's something. Exactly.
Situation.
It's not. 5 years.
We're still cooking.
there's some kind of,
Right. Just remind.
because you know,
Like.
I'm sure if there are some drastic stuff that we should let go. I mean, like education.
Well, we had that space for this, a little bit class of this. Instead of.
I mean, it's easier.
Like.
Yeah.
It was trying to sit here, I mean, it's like.
Also not just knowledge and research, or, you know, whatever, it's like a few.
And maybe next week.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we don't have the number.
What are the figures?
If we change numbers, we
Well,
change
yeah.
and we. We
That's
change
the
the
thing where, it's like, we just, in some respects,
Some of the same people that we're talking about.
we're the spokespeople for. It seemed like, yeah, I mean, I need the diversity truth is new and,
That's not enough.
there are ways to make this policy sustainable, to build.
Yeah.
this also.
They get all that.
That, that.
About that's the most probably,
I'm still looking at the yearly.
So. And that's coordinated. Department needs to change. Not me.
I just.
Policy.
For me.
What's that?
Similarly, in test.
Originals in general, and that's what I'm thinking about, meaning that there was stage.
That may not take.
What are the things that are, you're not gonna be right now, because we're not, yeah.
It can be best for really destroying. Right.
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 Runs are, I don't know. For me, yeah.
So you're.
Yes.
Yes.
You have,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and also making transportation.
I would even
and,
say at this point.
Okay, that's.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just think that. So, but, you know. Would it be unreasonable, like that, would it be unreasonable to reposition him as well as his position? Yes. Yes. Pretty much is would that be too much of a? Simple, yeah, so it's a big position.
Some of the things that you have here, like, I need some things to do.
Model of education being done.
Now we have this one, five thousand program. Yeah, but we don't.
And I'd be interested to know, like, what if you just like that, like, drops in, which made that child. I mean, you need to answer that question. It's trying to figure out how to.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you just send it to everyone on
Individual level.
The issue, there is a, we know there is an issue, but there is an. So, but we.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like. It's that.
And I would be a game changer.
That'd be a game changer. So many.
I
Yeah.
So you're doing it also, like, we, those people, you know, people understand. So that wants to, so if you want that, it tackles immigration, communities you want it, women, that's the story, it's conversations, they I missed that. I joined first go to our restaurant. You got a joint staff, you know, I that major the sports series or. We're not into it. We're not into it. Humanity. We're like. We don't have any credit. Zero about. Yeah. I think. But it's just like that's systemic. All this stuff. And I think strategy measure what our goals are. Strategy is one issue. But
now ordinance and the legal knowledge.
You have to increase in the best. Increase of this. Yeah, increase It's exponentially higher. We talked 6 years ago. Yeah, the value of funding is exponentially higher. That was right now. It's funny. It's slightly up next year. That's like domains. It's supposed to get more.
What is our strategy? But thinking about disappearing of middle class, we have to make like more.
So what is one of our outlets for the that strategy?
Businesses and nonprofits, you know, they all like really not getting.
They did come up with another.
That.
This is.
And I feel like they were still working. But knowing that they will, I think.
That might be something.
Yeah.
Industry education.
We can just put big.
Yeah, big.
CEC. Chips and collaborations, big PC.
More important. Could be a.
You put collaborations, we're just shutting collaborations.
More successful.
But I do think that the first one is about the Oregon money or
Strategic fund, investment money. I say because before, like a Spring is actually saying that one of the requirements for getting
right now,
the
kicker.
so much loan or.
Have come to us.
Is that you have to support operating and education and employment. Yes, exactly. A lot of times I'm looking at. I'm looking at like cash investment versus.
But I think there's gotta be a little.
Idea that started tax.
Diversifying funding.
you know, like if you was, I mean, the other piece that is coming out there is like, it's not that you think that whatever.
I think I would just think of most. With that thing.
I mean, I mean, should be.
Come on.
Been debated.
What's that?
The issue.
That I would.
Oh. Do you think the accountability piece of these, so that maybe to put
Just two issues.
So do you think, even in a soccer community, it's like, increase, what's this for? Increase like.
Semiconductor.
And like, like, but then, how it's like.
And then you have you.
How do you do it? Yeah, how do you deal with?
Yeah, I think we got to.
I don't want to school.
I think there's gotta be different.
I'm like, that's just dumb. It's just dumb. But that's the sort of like, me, I'm gonna try to give it.
Diversify funding streams.
So, yeah, it's like,
We gotta find the funding stream.
it was like, the outcome is being, it's that training, education and training, and investment in industry. Well, we have a full chart in Roger Industry.
Yeah. That's not. But that's.
Feel like there was, because you know, we build it, so then they, get. If you don't really make it, it's one of that's part of it. If you're feeling like able to go back. Yeah. I mean, not.
It's like something built up. That's where our money should.
You're gonna change it?
I would say.
Place. I mean,
But I think we gotta put it out there.
5 years, but I think that we are, is not, I don't think we're good out of one class. And, you know, okay, about. It's left.
These three
Because of convention and completion.
It'll take us a couple. So.
But I think, I think that should review.
So really, there's real nothing.
And I do figure out.
Diversified public funding.
Transforming funding strategy.
Here we go. There's a.
We don't know how yet, maybe got something.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We need transformation of funding strategy.
Yes. Is there another one where?
Regulations are.
Stay raising or right,
I was just coaching, and it was really very nervous. I know. We just.
I continue to third one about the address. You know, like how would we go that? Yeah. Yeah, it's more than.
Yeah, I know, and if that's just in the partnerships, all that, it really is.
So maybe it's just. Stuff is savings, there's potential to reinvest.
There's the community.
Or something. But we don't even know how the people legislature just shaking it us.
You know what I mean? This is.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Talking to ourselves.
It can't be like the institution. Because people will not hide.
Something as easy as,
We need the concert there, it's, I got the concert, I have
I'm just like, I think they came up with the ideas. Something like, it's not, they just figure out, I was really trying to figure out, who's very marketing, I'm really rapidly.
Well, opening the campus.
Oh, one's out,
Yeah,
no, it's totally about that answer, but. Right, and so, just that, yes.
We used to say yes.
So.
Sonic voice, raise your hand. We can hear the sound of my voice, raise your hand. All right, thank you all.
Like something more than.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Campus.
Okay, I'm gonna need it. We're gonna bring the conversation back. Oh my God. Bring the conversation back to the big group.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you all. I know when I said an hour, it was like, an hour? And then when I was doing 30 minutes, we're all like, oh, 30 minutes easy, and then I said 15, and you're like, hey, 15? So, all right. So here's what we're gonna do next. Welcome back. We are going to, you're gonna walk around, and you're gonna see what the other groups did. This is the group that, Ben and Keith that was in the other room, they're over here. Sarah is gonna print out what the virtual team did, and we have, another one here that you can comment, star, it's not pretty, but you'll be able to see it. So what you wanna do is you wanna circulate around the room, and you wanna look at what others did. You can use your short sticks. Can you all hear me?
I can.
All right, I'm just gonna give you some quick instructions, and then we'll go and do your thing. You're gonna take your postage, you're gonna take your stickers, and you're gonna circulate around the room, you're gonna see what each other did. And you can put a post-it with a question or a comment. You can put a star on it if you really like it, you love it, you want to accentuate it and amplify it. We're gonna let you do that for about 20 minutes. In that 20 minutes, take a break. Take a break, do what you know you need to do for a few minutes. But we'll be back together as a big group at 10 to 4. Does anyone have any questions about what I'm asking you to do right now?
For the virtual group, are we gonna get the other groups posted soon?
Sarah has taken pictures. Thank you for the question, Richard. The question is, for the virtual group, how are they gonna see the work in the room? Sarah is sending Colleen pictures and she's gonna upload them onto the mural board, so you should have them shortly. Did I answer your question?
And what's the difference between a star and a thumbs up?
They all the same in my book, but if you were start a thumbs up in some way, no.
Just to explain for people in the room, this is the virtual teams board. If you want to do stars or stickies for them, you would do it on this like blank board over here. So not a bigger screen.
All right, any other questions? All right, 20 minutes. Take a break in that 20 minutes, roam around, see what each other did, and comment and questions.
They're Anne's streaming, so she left. You want to steal them?
You have your, stars. Comments or?
And I'm like, no, it's my turn.
And so. Okay. Whenever you do this in the existing office.
Wrong this way.
Next to that.
There's good. Sarah, Colleen was just in here. She took a picture of this one. Do you have the
Oh,
others?
I'll send them all to you right now, Colleen. I have them all.
1 minute. Colleen's getting the pictures right now.
Students facing on this people.
Zero.
It's
like they do some similar things.
Yeah, see what coffee does.
You know, I have.
Yeah.
Amy, there's some right there.
Yeah.
We already. The system.
To the system.
In the hamster wheel.
So if we just put the star right on the
Yeah.
things, those won't move around.
Oh, yeah. I think they're pretty solid on that.
Yes.
You're right. Two voices, stats.
You have. Did you go around again? Just with a lot of years?
No, I saw all of them.
Yes.
You want to stay.
Yes. That was the
We'll run out of stars.
I have sent you if you need them.
Yeah.
If you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a good boy.
The virtual group may need more time.
We'll give you time.
We don't have anything yet.
Based on my. You need to see the water now. Something in exchange. Yeah, we got smart. Double down, how that moment of security is social.
I didn't take any pictures on ours of that.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm gonna put you on Colleen.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So where do we mark the?
So for theirs, there's, that group, so shades, I'm shocked. Did you put a star? Like, how was it?
Strategy to buy.
I feel like they're.
Oh.
Yeah. We're numbered. Fans. You gotta wonder if those are like.
It would have been more
Backed up, yeah. What's your face
Such a
on?
round number.
Yeah.
Could have been 32 and a half.
37. Oh my God. I remember.
We never can. Except we had it as a book.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
All of those issues.
It's okay. He's just on blood. I think. It's okay though. I think it'll be fine.
Guthrie,
Yes?
the virtual group still has nothing.
The virtual, you don't have anything, Commissioner Deborah? Let me
We're
check.
working on it.
Let me check with Colleen.
Sorry, guys, the email is not wanting to take the photos, so we're working on it though.
Colleen, do you want me to put you back in the breakout room and you guys can share?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Guthrie.
Yeah, exactly.
At least I'm on.
We were only supposed to have 6, right?
Well, first time shows up.
I was given 12, so.
Oh, good for you. It's yourself. That's a secret. See if they can find a
Zero option.
There are two types of.
Hey, let's keep an eye on it. See you grab all three.
That was never.
The posting. Outbreak. Most even almost 10 minutes. See, I do that last a little bit. Okay. We did create public access. Yeah, that's just too much joy.
Yeah, Jennifer, well. Is this one? No. Yeah, there's definitely.
Well, yeah. You gonna be first?
That's right.
Let's see what wins.
I think you must have been giving like. No money. It's in my desk. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, that's wrong. Fair. Well, I mean, not. What did we learn? It's hard to tell the difference between. Hard to. It's hard to be very, I don't. It's hard to be really specific. We go back to what we was about. Yeah.
He was willing to do that.
Let's remember on the show. Oh, so we did this little, this little school has a sign.
As we're getting to the end of the day, we're still recording, and this public meeting will be posted publicly, and our mics are quite sensitive, so just keep that in mind.
Thank you. Just guys.
If there's a loud, but you can just bury it.
I didn't know.
Oh, that's what you're doing. Okay, so party.
Yeah. All that.
Were you presenting earnings or you were just?
I was just in the meeting with my camera.
There you go.
Yeah, and I still got Sharpie back. Oh, yeah. Very
You thought this, she stayed.
Like the decorum was just, like, it would be like.
Sorry.
We'll help spot this.
Bill's trying to hold back the pen.
So proud.
You know,
State employees, if it's not counted down, we'll take it.
Yeah. It's a piece.
This
is just the
They're
extended.
picking everything up. It will be posted for public. What? Yeah, since we've been here this whole time, yeah, we posted to our YouTube channel. I guess I should have provided my shot.
I never saw him.
Well, okay, right.
That's.
I want to spend some here.
That's the phrase of that. That's what's your name to the video.
This is like 5 more minutes. Sharpies. Stars, you can keep the stars, don't tell my daughter.
About 5 more minutes, retreat to
Yeah.
What?
Energy. I'm going to, but fun. Yeah. Oh my God. There were.
Thank you for putting the remote poster breakout room, I think they job thing, it's very nice.
Okay. Whenever they're ready to come back.
Yeah.
I am drowsy. Sugar. That's my strategy for staying awake. While driving. My life where I did some of our scenes. But those that gave me. I like peanut M&Ms. Actually, my go-to. So I will, you know, but if I'm feeling, I want to be healthy, I'll do an apple and just like take really slow. Yeah. A lot of that. Yeah. From Salem to Eugene. So a lot of, and it was like, the morning commute is fine, but then one evening commute, oh, like daily. Yeah. You live in Eugene? I live in Eugene now, but when I first moved to Oregon, my husband worked at HECC. Yeah. And so he was working at Salem in Portland, so we lived in Salem.
Is he still Oregon Housing Authority?
Oregon Health was a station for a bit. I'm done. Yeah.
Let me hop in.
He did it for about 2 years and he was like so stressed out, like so unhealthy. Yeah. He like quit and he got to do consulting. He's like a different person. And he feels like he's making more of a difference. It's like those high.
Hey, y'all.
Yeah.
I'm ready to.
Right. They just were being down here and then you're gonna have to.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Much better.
Okay.
I'm doing much better.
Okay, okay, all, how do we do it?
This is one of my Amazon chart.
That's
It
fine.
was South Eugene. South Eugene. But it actually.
I live there. That's near Highway.
Yeah, I live 2 blocks.
Highway.
As we speak.
I love that big.
Great part. I mean,
It is.
it's a pretty, it's a pretty nice light.
When and if I do complete this, do I need to save anything?
No, it is saved in there.
Okay.
All right, and you're
I live in Portland, but I work in Bandon.
great. So
I don't need Bandon.
we're gonna close things out and wrap up for today. Just want to thank everyone for the engagement, the creative thinking, the collaborative discussions, and all of the work that went into this beautiful input that will be carried forward for the planning team to utilize in drafting the strategic plan. We're also happy to share, we're taking photos of all of these and we're happy to share them. The virtual team has been working in a Miro board and is putting in their, comments and feedback and reactions in there. And so we can share that with everyone. If you have additional comments or reactions or feedback that you would want to add, things that you think of later. Before we closed out, we did want to do an equity check, kind of come back to where we started in regard to the equity lens and those questions that we wanted to pull forward. And we'll use the same kind of approach during the planning process. And so some of it is practice for all of us today to kind of reflect back on our conversations, those questions that we wanted to elevate. And would love for anyone to share any examples you have of how did you use those questions or that lens, that thinking in conversations and the work today. Anyone have any examples you might want to share?
Yes, I can start. For me, I tried to make sure that when we were thinking about strategies and outcomes, that I wasn't just thinking about one particular student, I was thinking about a community of students, and I probably wouldn't have been intentionally focused there if we hadn't have scrambled first.
Great, that's great to hear. Thank you. Yeah. Other examples of ways that you feel like you were able to use those questions, or just, it's not so much the questions, it's the lens, on our process and our thinking and our decisions today.
Yeah, one of the things that happened in our group was that we decided to intentionally include not only our perception about what students needed, but what students themselves said they wanted. In other words, not just presuming that we knew.
Right. Great. Thank you. Okay, we'll use the lens in our planning process. It's great practice for all of us to think about how to apply it. We're always learning together, and in this journey, I will say, just to share with you all, we use this lens in all of our higher education work across the state, and try and center it and practice using it with the colleges and other educational institutions we work with. So just know it's a helpful tool in other spaces and places. So just the last thing we'll do is refresh on what is coming next in our process. So as we mentioned, we're about halfway through the strategic planning process with our strategic clarity retreat. today. So from here, we'll go into those planning work sessions with the planning team. And then get to having a draft strategic plan by August. In September is when we'll go back out to you all, to the broader commission, to all of the different interested parties that we engaged in the initial process through focus groups and the survey, to re-engage people around the draft strategic plan and get their feedback. Then the planning team will come back, make meaning of that feedback. We'll go through a revision process, adjust anything that we need to based on that feedback. And then we will have a finalized strategic plan by October. So anything else, Beth or Tara, that you would like to say in conclusion before we wrap up today?
No, I'd just like to thank you and thank everyone for their level of participation. It really, and it really was fun working with staff. So thank you very much for being our partners in this. It's been a long day. Let's go.
Thanks for the hard work and the rigorous thinking today, everyone. Looking forward to continuing our work with you. Take care.
Oh, yeah. I've got the lowest here.